morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar.
And I'm Hemkor Suran. On the show today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said his troops' incursion into Russia's Kursk region, it's part of a victory plan that he will present to US President Joe Biden next month. He added that the war with Russia would eventually have to end in dialogue, but that Kyiv had to be in a strong position. We'll bring you more details on this on the show today.
And also on the show, former President Donald Trump has been hit with a new 36-page indictment related to his effort to overturn his 2020 election defeat. The revised indictment lays out the same 4 charges it brought against Trump last year, but it focuses on his role as political candidate seeking re-election rather than as the president at that time. We'll get you more on that, but first, the headlines.
U.S. federal prosecutors filed new indictment against former President Donald Trump over his efforts to interfere with the 2020 presidential election. The revised charges follow a Supreme Court ruling granting former presidents broader immunity.
Israeli security forces launch operation in north of West Bank days after 5 killed in airstrike. Palestinian Health Ministry reports 2 people killed by Israeli forces in the city of Jenin.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says war with Russia would eventually end in dialogue, says he would present a victory plan to US President Joe Biden and his potential successor.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un attends test of an upgraded rocket launcher system. This comes days after North Korea showcased its new suicide drones amid rising tensions with South Korea.
In the case of rape and murder of a doctor in India's Kolkata, investigators to consult experts on DNA forensic reports to rule out possibility of more than one person's involvement.
Pacific Island leaders meeting in Tonga to endorse a joint policing plan. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says Pacific Policing Initiative to create a multinational crisis reaction force.
Two-time champion Naomi Osaka makes an emotional and triumphant return to the US Open. The Japanese dispatches Yelena Ostapenko in a blockbuster clash between former Grand Slam winners in first round.
Our U.S. federal prosecutors have filed a revised indictment against former President Donald Trump that accuses him of trying to overturn his 2020 election defeat to the incumbent U.S. President Joe Biden.
Right, this comes after Supreme Court ruling said that former U.S. presidents have broader immunity against criminal prosecution. The revised indictment filed by Special Counsel Jack Smith includes the same 4 charges leveled against Donald Trump last year, but is centered more on his role as a candidate seeking re-election rather as the president. This report brings you all the details. Take a look.
Former President Donald Trump was hit with a new 36-page indictment on Tuesday, related to his effort to overturn his 2020 election defeat. The new indictment was obtained by U.S. Special Counsel Jack Smith's team after narrowing their approach to the election subversion case, following a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that former presidents have broad immunity from criminal prosecution. The revised indictment lays out the same 4 charges it brought against Trump last year, but it focuses on his role as a political candidate seeking re-election, rather than as the president at the time. The new reworked indictment no longer includes allegations that Trump sought to pressure the U.S. Justice Department in his bid to overturn the election. Dropping those allegations appeared to be an effort to keep the prosecution alive, after the Supreme Court found on July 1st that Trump could not be prosecuted for that conduct. A Justice Department spokesman said the case was presented to a new grand jury, which had not heard evidence from the original case. Attorneys for Trump did not immediately respond to a request for comment.
Meanwhile, Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance slammed special counsel Jack Smith, calling the fresh indictment charges an effort to influence the election.
I think it's clearly an effort to try to do more election interference from Jack Smith. He should be ashamed of himself, and it's one of the reasons why we have to win, because he should not be anywhere near power.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report on the same. Let's listen to this.
Special counsel Jack Smith has filed a new indictment against former President Donald Trump, despite the fact that the Supreme Court ruled granting former presidents immunity. The new indictment charges the former president with the same 4 federal offenses related to the overturning of the 2020 election, but it has adjustments to conform to the Supreme Court ruling and is now focused on actions outside of presidential duties. For example, pressuring state officials with false election claims. Now, allegations involving the Justice Department and co-conspirator Jeffrey Clark have been dropped. The case will proceed to court on September 5th to determine what the next steps should be. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION The World this one.
Now, Georgia, it was one state that made headlines long after the 2020 U.S. presidential elections, after voting in red for 6 consecutive elections.
Now, Joe Biden had managed to flip the state blue, but less than 12,000 votes till today. Donald Trump claims that the Democrats stole the election in Georgia. So with this just 70 days to go for presidential elections, the swing state is back in the news, this time for an election rule.
Now, Georgia's state election board, it has adopted a new rule that allows officials to refuse to clarify or certify an election. What this means is that some local election boards can choose to not officiate the results after voting. And the immediate after effect would be a delay in finalizing poll results. The state and National Democratic parties have sued the state board for this. They are arguing that the rules violate an existing law that makes certification a mandatory duty and not a choice. Democrats further accuse the body of exceeding its legal authority.
Georgia's state election board is now dominated by allies of Donald Trump, and those in support are arguing that county election board is just fulfilling its duty, noting that each board member must swear an oath to compile true and perfect results.
Georgia, it's one of the most heated political battlegrounds in this election. Democratic presidential duo Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going to be in the state this week. And Georgia was one of the first stops by Trump and J.D. Vance after the Republican convention.
I'm J.D. Vance. I'm running for vice president. Good to see you.
Okay.
We're going to do 2 dozen.
Okay.
And understand also that look at how Georgia has voted in the last 5 elections. In the last elections, there was just 0.2% difference. When, as we told you, Biden flipped the state after 6 Democratic losses. In 2016, the winning margin was 5.2%. In 2012, 7.8%. In 2008, it was again 5.2%. Lastly, in 2004, there was a 16.6% difference, the largest in the 5 elections we are looking at. 2004 was the same year George Bush won re-elections, and the state clearly played an important role in that. Which side Georgia will be swinging this time remains to be seen. All right, let's talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. UN Nuclear Agency Chief Rafael Grossi on Tuesday visited the Kursk nuclear power plant region, which Moscow says has been repeatedly attacked by Ukrainian forces.
This visit comes in the backdrop of repeated warnings of the dangers of fighting around nuclear plants. Take a look at this next report for more on this.
UN nuclear watchdog chief Rafael Grossi said Russia's Kursk power plant is at risk of a nuclear accident. That's while a frontline battle rages in the Kursk region, a mere 25 miles from the plant.
When a plant is operating, the temperature is much higher, and if there was the case of an impact or something that could affect it, there would be serious consequences.
Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, gave his warning on Tuesday after an inspection.
This nuclear power plant is of the RBMK type, which basically means that it does not have the containment dome and protective structure that is typical to most of the more current nuclear power plants. What does this mean? This means that the core of the reactor containing nuclear material is protected just by a normal roof. This makes it extremely exposed.
President Vladimir Putin accused Ukraine last week of trying to attack the Kursk plant. That's after Ukrainian troops carved out a portion of Russian territory this month. Ukraine has yet to respond to the accusations that it attacked the facility. The safety of nuclear power plants has repeatedly been endangered over the course of the Ukraine war. Conflict began in February 2022, when Russia sent thousands of troops over the border into Ukraine. Moscow and Kyiv have repeatedly blamed each other for drone and artillery attacks on the Russian-controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine. However, the recent incursion by Ukrainian forces into Russia has put the spotlight on the Kursk plant. It has 4 reactors of the same design as those at the Chernobyl nuclear plant, scene of the world's worst civilian nuclear disaster in 1986. Grossi also visited a school in the region, close to the Kursk nuclear power plant. A Reuters reporter heard air raid sirens blaring, indicating a missile threat, moments before Grossi arrived. Grossi has repeatedly warned of a nuclear disaster if nuclear plants are attacked.
Now, Russian missile and drone attacks targeting scores of Ukrainian regions left at least 6 people dead on Tuesday.
Well, this comes a day after Moscow's biggest air raid. Now, of course, this attack on Ukraine in the central city of Kyiv. A missile wiped out a hotel, killing 3 people, while 3 people were killed in drone attacks on the southeastern Ukrainian city of Zaporizhzhia, and 4 were hurt in a missile strike on the northeastern region of Kharkiv.
Ukrainian Air Force said it downed 5 of 10 incoming missiles and 60 out of 81 drones during the attacks on Tuesday. President Zelensky vowed to retaliate against Russia for its attacks.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's army chief Alexander Syrskyi had said that Kyiv's forces now control 1,294 square kilometers and 100 settlements in Russia's Kursk region. Syrskyi added that Ukraine has taken 594 Russian soldiers prisoner during the 3-week-long incursion.
We have 1,294 square kilometers of territory under our control. 100 settlements are located on this territory. Also, thanks to the successful actions of our troops, we significantly replenished the exchange fund. To date, 594 servicemen of the armed forces of the Russian Federation have been captured in this direction.
On the other hand, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov slammed the West for supplying weapons to Ukraine, which are being used by the Kyiv forces. He said the West is playing with fire and asking for it by supporting Ukraine.
This is blackmail. This is an attempt to pretend that the West wants to avoid excessive escalation, but in reality, it is deceit. The West does not want to avoid escalation. The West, as they say, is asking for it.
Apart from that, Russian Defense Minister Andrei Borisov held a meeting on military security issues in the border areas of Belgorod, Bryansk and Kursk regions. He declared to provide everything necessary to the fighters on the front lines defending the country.
What is important is not the formal fulfillment of requests, but to organize a real improvement, to provide the fighters who are today on the front lines in the regions who are doing their duty defending the country, and our task is to provide everything necessary.
Meanwhile, at Kyiv's request, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg is convening a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council today.
Ukraine Defense Minister Rustem Umerov is expected to brief allies on the battlefield situation and priority capabilities needs.
Після того, як вона вирішує саму стратегію політичну.
All right, the Israeli army on Wednesday said that it launched an operation in the north of the West Bank.
This as Palestinian Health Ministry reported deaths of 2 people in the city of Jenin.
In a joint statement issued with Shin Bet Security Service on Telegram, the Israeli army spokesperson claimed that the operation was undertook to thwart terrorism in Jenin and Tulkam.
Meanwhile, Palestinian Health Ministry informed that 2 men aged 25 and 39 were killed by Israeli forces in Jenin. The operation comes after an airstrike by Israel Air Force reportedly killed 5 people in the West Bank.
In a similar action, an Israeli airstrike took out a pickup truck traveling in the northeast Lebanon, claiming that it was carrying military equipment. The report said that the strike targeted the pickup truck near Chat, a remote region in Lebanon near Syrian border, although the driver survived.
The IDF sources said that the pickup was likely carrying a damaged rocket launcher on the way to be repaired. This comes 2 days after the militant group Hezbollah launched hundreds of rockets against Israel in one of the most intense crossfires in last 10 months.
On the other hand, Pentagon on Tuesday said that Houthi rebels were blocking the efforts to reach and assist the Greek tanker on fire in the Red Sea. The Pentagon, in its press briefing, said that it was aware of a third party that tried to send 2 tugboats towards the vessel to help salvage. Pentagon also said that the damaged vessel was leaking oil into the sea. However, Pentagon did not identify the third party involved.
As I highlighted, CENTCOM continues to monitor and assess the situation. We are aware of a third party that attempted to send 2 tugs to the vessel to help salvage, but they were warned away by the Houthis and threatened with being attacked, which again demonstrates their blatant disregard for not only human life, but also for the potential environmental catastrophe that this presents.
The Greek-flagged crude oil tanker is on fire after it was targeted by multiple projectiles last week. Iran-backed group took responsibility for the attack on the tanker in a televised address, claiming that the tanker violated its ban on entry to the ports of occupied Palestine. The tunnels in the Gaza Strip have proven to be a safe haven for Hamas.
Right, and the tunnels have emerged as a fortress with storage of arms and ammunition, and also a place for keeping the captives from the October 7 attack.
And now from the dark, cramped up space, Israel has rescued 1 hostage. Qaid Farhan al-Qadi, a 52-year-old Israeli, is one of the 251 abducted by Hamas during the October 7th attack. Currently, 104 people are still held hostage by Hamas, including the 34 which the Israeli military say are no more.
According to military spokesperson Dani Hagari, al-Qadi was found in an underground tunnel.
Today, Israeli special forces successfully rescued one of our hostages from Hamas captivity in Gaza. During a complex rescue mission, Qaid Farhan al-Qadi from the Bedouin community of Rat, who was kidnapped from Israel by Hamas terrorists during their massacre on October 7th, has been rescued. He is alive. He is back home in Israel. We cannot go into many details of this special operation, but I can share that Israeli commandos rescued Qaid Farhan al-Qadi from an underground tunnel following accurate intelligence.
Family members of Farhan Qadi hurried through the corridors of Soroka Medical Center Hospital, eager to reunite with him after the rescue.
I can't express my feelings. I hope my mother will be happier than us. We prayed for him. My mother prayed for him more. Her prayer reached the sky. Welcome home, Farhan al-Qadi. I congratulate the IDF and the Shin Bet on another successful liberation operation. We work tirelessly to return all of our hostages. We do this in two ways: through negotiations and liberation operations. Both ways together require our military presence in the field and unceasing military pressure on Hamas. We will continue to act like this until we bring everyone home.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had a telephonic conversation with Qaid. In the exchange, Netanyahu told him that the government was committed to bring back all hostages that are remaining in Gaza. After al-Qadi's rescue, 108 Israeli and foreign hostages are still in the Gaza. Now, however, only about 1/3 of them are known to have died, and it is unknown what became of the remaining hostages.
The operation, which has resulted in significant destruction of the Gaza Strip and the displacement of the majority of its 2.3 million inhabitants, leaving hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in makeshift shelters, it's seen more than 40,000 Palestinians killed by Israeli forces.
Geopolitical tensions simmer in the Asia-Pacific. A high-stakes diplomatic dance unfolds in Beijing.
This with regional allies on edge in long-standing disputes threatening to boil over. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan's visit to China marks a critical juncture in the delicate balance of power between these global giants. Take a look at this report.
China is making aggressive moves, which is rattling many of its neighbors. Japan accuses China of violating its airspace, accusing Beijing of dangerous and coercive actions. The Philippines labels Beijing the biggest disruptor of peace in Southeast Asia. Both have frequently clashed in the South China Sea. These developments have further heightened regional anxieties, particularly as China's military and economic influence continues to expand. These flashpoints underscore the volatile atmosphere into which Jake Sullivan, U.S. National Security Advisor, steps as he arrives in Beijing for crucial talks with China's top diplomat Wang Yi. Sullivan is visiting China from August 27th to 29th, and he hopes to bolster the ties between the two economic superpowers.
We are working to ensure that competition does not veer into conflict, and that we find ways to work together where our interests align. And all of that requires the kind of strategic and substantive and constructive dialogue that Director Wang was just referring to, and to which we remain committed.
Sullivan's meeting with Wang Yi marks the fifth direct encounter between the two officials since last year. Both are expected to tackle a range of contentious topics, including Taiwan, the South China Sea, and the ongoing U.S. fentanyl crisis. Another key issue on the agenda is China's alleged support for Russia's defense industry, a claim Beijing has repeatedly denied. This high-level meeting in Beijing is widely viewed as paving the way for another summit between President Biden and President Xi. Their previous encounter in San Francisco saw agreements to manage bilateral tensions through various working groups, a strategy now put to the test.
I hope, as always, the communication will remain strategic but also substantive, of course at the same time constructive. I hope it will help China-US relationship move forward towards the San Francisco vision and truly realize stable, healthy and sustainable development.
Beijing is expected to voice concerns over what it perceives as arbitrary measures by Washington. These include tariffs, export controls, and sanctions targeting Chinese companies and products. Measures Beijing sees as attempts to stifle its technological advancement and manufacturing capabilities. With China's economic and military might continuing to reshape the Asia-Pacific landscape and its assertive stance in territorial disputes causing alarm among US allies, Sullivan's Beijing talks represent a critical opportunity to navigate the treacherous waters of US-China relations. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Right, more than 70,000 students, including several Indians, face deportation scare after Canada tightened the rules for extension of work and study permits.
And this decision has sparked protests across different states of Canada. New immigration policies of the Canadian government are aimed at reducing permanent residency nominations as well as limiting study permits. The students are protesting against the new policies in the provinces of Ontario, Manitoba, British Columbia and Prince Edward Island.
The new immigration policies aim to limit the study permit applications, expecting 35% decrease in study permits, work permits in regions with 6% or more. Unemployment rates will also be denied in order to give jobs to the locals.
Over the last few years, immigration has contributed to nearly 97% of population growth in Canada. Rapid immigration amid local housing and job crisis forced the Trudeau government to take steps to control the inflow of international students. The Canadian government also aims to reduce the temporary resident population to 5% of the total population of the country. The new policies are expected to impact Indian students the most. Nearly 319,000 Indian students moved to Canada in the year 2023.
Find out how well you are going to do. Already reached a good level of achievement.
Yeah, or have any other kind of difficulties, and those are the people that really could benefit from this scheme.
This one-year course will prepare them for...
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
But don't go anywhere. On the other side of World DNA, in the case of rape and murder of doctor in India's Kolkata, investigators will consult experts on DNA and forensic reports to rule out possibility of more than one person's involvement.
As outrage continues over the rape and murder of the trainee doctor at the Ajikar Hospital in Kolkata, hundreds of students clashed with police on Tuesday as they marched to the Secretariat.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. seeing is believing.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar, and my colleague, Haim Kosaroya. Let's start with the headlines first.
In the case of rape and murder of a doctor in India's Kolkata, investigators to consult experts on DNA and forensic reports to rule out possibility of more than one person's involvement.
U.S. federal prosecutors filed new indictment against former President Donald Trump over his efforts to interfere with the 2020 presidential election. The revised charges follow a Supreme Court ruling granting former president's broader immunity.
Pacific Island leaders meeting in Tonga endorsed a joint policing plan for the region. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says that the Pacific Policing Initiative will create a multinational crisis reaction force.
U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan resumes meetings with top Chinese officials in Beijing during his 3-day visit aimed at quieting tensions between the two superpowers ahead of the U.S. election.
Israeli security forces launch operation in North-West Bank days after 5 killed in airstrike. Palestinian Health Ministry reports 2 people killed by Israeli forces in the city of Jenin.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says war with Russia would eventually end in dialogue, says he would present a victory plan to U.S. President Joe Biden and his potential successors.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un attends test of an upgraded rocket launcher system. This comes days after North Korea showcased its new suicide drones amid rising tensions with South Korea.
Pavel Durov, the founder and chief of Telegram, is set to learn today whether he will face charges and remanded in custody after his weekend arrest by French authorities over alleged violations at the messaging app.
Two-time champion Naomi Osaka makes an emotional and triumphant return to the US Open. The Japanese dispatches Elena Ostapenko in a blockbuster clash between former Grand Slam winners in the first round.
And the top story right now, in the case of rape and murder of a doctor in India's Kolkata, investigators will consult experts on DNA and forensic reports to rule out possibility of more than one person's involvement.
This is outrage continues over the rape and murder of a trainee doctor at the RG Kar Hospital in Kolkata. Hundreds of students clashed with police on Tuesday as they marched to the Secretariat.
The Central Bureau of Investigation will consult experts from the All India Institute of Medical Science on the DNA and forensic reports. Officials said that the CBI will send the reports to AIIMS to seek their opinion in the case in order to build a watertight case. The reports will also help for the agency to ascertain if accused Sanjay Roy was the only one who committed the crime or there were others involved.
Meanwhile, the supporters of the ruling Trinamool Congress and opposition BJP face off during a 12-hour bandh called by the BJP. Trinamool Congress accused the BJP of inciting unrest in the state.
The streets of Howrah turned into a battle zone on Tuesday during a massive protest. Police fired water cannons and tear gas shells to disperse the student protesters as they tried to break the barricades. The protest was organized by student outfit Paschim Bang Chhatra Samaj, which demanded the resignation of West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee.
The main accused in the rape and murder case, Sanjay Roy, is currently lodged in Kolkata's Presidency Jail, where he was subjected to a lie detector test by the CBI on Sunday.
On Monday, the CBI conducted a second round of polygraph tests on the former principal of the RG Kar Medical College and Hospital in connection with the murder case, while an FIR has also been registered against him for corruption. While standoff between India and China continues in eastern Ladakh along the line of actual control, far away from the Himalayan region in the Indian Ocean, the docking of 3 Chinese warships along with frontline Indian warship at Colombo port for a moment raised the specter of another tension.
However, Indian warship INS Mumbai and the Chinese warship Hefei Wuzishan and the Chilishan are scheduled to hold separate passage exercises with the Sri Lankan warships. INS Mumbai, on a 3-day visit to Sri Lanka, will engage in the exercise on its departure on the 29th of August.
The Indian warship is a 163-meter-long guided missile destroyer, which is manned by a crew of 410 members. The warship is commanded by Captain Sandeep Kumar, while China's Hefei warship is a 144.50-meter-long guided missile destroyer crewed by 267 personnel. China's second warship docked in Colombo is Wuzishan, which is a 210-meter-long landing platform dock, also called amphibious transport dock, manned by 872 crew members. Beijing's third warship at the harbor is Chilishan, a 210-meter-long standing platform dock with 334 crew members.
Which means that both Wuzishan and the Chilishan warships are the landing platform docks and are designed to transport troops into a war zone by sea. Sri Lanka welcomed all 4 Indian and Chinese warships with the naval traditions.
China's growing presence in the Indian Ocean region has been a cause of major concern for India, as Beijing has been deploying survey and research spy vessels in the region for oceanographic mapping and gathering of data related to navigation and submarine operations.
In the past, India have been registering its protests with Colombo to allow docking of Chinese warships, spy vessels and submarines at the Lankan ports. More than 100 people killed in Pakistan's Balochistan province as the separatist militants attacked the police stations, railway lines, highways, and security forces launched retaliatory operations.
Now, in the aftermath of the attacks, a railway bridge collapsed. It was a colonial link between the Balochistan province and the rest of Pakistan. The bridge was bombed by the militants in one of the coordinated attacks.
The law and order situation here is very bad. If this persists in Balochistan, then no one will want to come here, including me. The government should control law and order here. There is definitely fear here. It's a steep mountainous area where militants can hide and fear is natural. But the journey has to go on.
The attacks began on Sunday night when a group of armed militants blocked a highway in Musakhel and offloaded passengers from a bus, checked their identities and then one by one shot the innocent people. Among the dead are 50 personnel of the Pakistan Army, 1 police officer, 35 civilians and 13 militants.
Militants also set vehicles on fire. Not too far from Musakhel, a railway bridge was blown up in Bolan district. This led to the suspension of rail traffic in Quetta. According to reports, 10 people, including 4 paramilitary officers, were killed in Kala district and 40 armed personnel died in the Lasbela district.
Pakistan's Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi called the attacks part of a well-thought-out plan to create anarchy in Pakistan.
We all are sad by what happened the day before yesterday. Such incidents are intolerable. We will respond to it collectively. Those who are thinking they can scare us or give us a message, they will get a response very soon.
The Baloch Liberation Army has claimed responsibility for the recent attacks. In a statement, the BLA said it had launched an operation on highways across Balochistan. The group also claimed to have targeted only security personnel. It is the most active militant separatist group in the province.
This is where Balochistan is on the map of Pakistan. It is in the country's southwest region and borders Afghanistan and Iran.
Balochistan is Pakistan's largest province by size. It accounts for 44% of the country's landmass. Balochistan is extremely rich in natural resources. It has copper, gold, coal and natural gas. And despite all this, Balochistan is Pakistan's poorest province.
Now, the BLA has been seeking independence for Balochistan. It is the biggest of the several ethnic rebel factions, claiming that the federal government unfairly takes advantage of Balochistan's abundant natural riches and has been at war with it for decades.
In a televised address to the cabinet, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said the attacks were meant to stop CPEC.
Terrorists want to stop China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and other development projects going on in Balochistan and other parts of Pakistan. The terrorists' main motive is to drive a wedge between Pakistan and China.
The gruesome attack by the hostile separatist elements was condemned by both the United States and China. The U.S. Embassy in Islamabad in a statement said that it quote-unquote strongly condemns the attack on civilians and the security forces in Balochistan.
Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry, deriding the attack, said that it will continue to provide strong support to Pakistan to conduct the anti-terrorism operation and will help weed out the hostile forces.
The attack was also condemned by Turkey that said, and I'm quoting here, it stands in full solidarity with friendly and brotherly government and people of Pakistan in the fight against terrorism.
All right, all is not well in the lost paradise on earth, and it so appears that President Mohammad Muizzu's honeymoon period has come to an end.
The Maldives Police Services, or the MPS, is probing allegations of trying to stage a coup against the Maldivian Democratic Party in the island nation's principal opposition.
The development comes after a pivotal decision taken by the Bank of Maldives on Sunday. It suspended foreign transaction allowances on debit and credit cards related to Maldivian rupiah accounts. In addition, the bank reportedly brought down the monthly foreign transaction limit for existing standard and gold credit cards to US dollars.
It is the timing of the move that has triggered the investigation. Interestingly, the bank announced its decision while the opposition party was addressing a press conference on the government's financial situation. The country's police suspect foul play. They are terming it as a ploy hatched by the opposition party and the bank to overthrow the Muizzu government.
According to the cops, the opposition MDP tried to overthrow the government while the BML's board of directors made the decision on Saturday and announced it publicly on Sunday. The cops have also alleged that hundreds of quote-unquote bot accounts were active on social media shortly after the bank's announcement. These bot accounts called on residents to take onto the streets to overthrow the government.
However, after facing pressure from the Maldives Monetary Authority, the BML was forced to reverse its decision. In a statement issued on Sunday, the bank said changes to card limits for foreign transactions announced on the 25th of August 2024 have been reversed based on instruction from our regulator, the Maldives Monetary Authority.
The abrupt change in policy had sparked widespread concern, including a rise in the black market rate for the dollar. This apart from increased fears of inflation and economic instability, Maldives Republic quoted.
Analysts and opposition leaders had slammed the decision and warned of severe economic repercussions and disruption to essential international payments.
The international credit card rating agency Fitch downgraded the Maldives in June. It warned that the island nation could be headed for a sovereign default after its foreign currency reserves dropped to $492 million in May. The downgrade came weeks after the IMF warned the Maldives against a looming debt distress as the small but strategically placed country eyes further borrowing from a main creditor, China.
Now, there is a raging debate brewing. Australia just passed a right to disconnect law.
Now, this rule offers employees to avoid taking calls after working hours without worrying about any consequences. However, a Bloomberg exclusive puts the focus on NVIDIA's millionaire employees who face grueling and high-stress work hours.
Since the beginning of 2019, NVIDIA stock has surged 3,776%. Reason? The business reaps the rewards of selling the central chip needed for artificial intelligence development. This has created a slew of new multimillionaires. However, according to NVIDIA's current and past employees, the work hours are equally demanding and stressful. This means there isn't much time for the luxurious vacations, new homes, and leisure activities that many can now afford. A Bloomberg report quoting 10 current and former employees shows a cultural issue starting to develop at NVIDIA. No other firm in history has accumulated market worth at the rate of the 31-year-old chip maker. Employees have spoken out about the chaotic management system and the standards of sloppiness and overwork set by founder and CEO Jensen Huang. An ex-employee said that he was required to work non-stop, sometimes until 1 or 2 in the morning. According to him, a lot of his co-workers, particularly those in engineering, put in extra hours regularly. He stated the situation was like being in a pressure cooker. However, he did say that the compensation package made it difficult to quit. According to Bloomberg, he quit in May but wished to remain anonymous. Another former employee said that she frequently attended 7 to 10 meetings daily, including incidents of fighting and yelling frequently. The golden handcuffs, the chance for even more riches, were the reason she endured it for 2 years. However, NVIDIA has not had any difficulty in staffing. The reason? NVIDIA gives stock grants to its employees, which becomes accessible over a 4-year period. This provides them motivation to remain and receive their whole pay package.
After reaching a valuation of over $1 trillion in 2023, the company's turnover rate decreased by nearly half to 2.7% from 5.3% in 2023. Compared to Nvidia, the overall turnover rate in the semiconductor business is 17.7%. With the stock price skyrocketing, many Nvidia employees now have larger nest eggs than their colleagues at rival chipmakers. The real question is the money worth it? Especially in a world where employees are looking at life over money. Business Bureau Report, WION World is One. All right, let's take a look at the developments from the world of technology. Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, has called for a strict regulation of cyberspace. Khamenei cited the arrest of Telegram founder Pavel Durov as an example of how other countries, too, have imposed cyber controls. Iran has some of the strictest internet controls in the world. However, its block on US-based social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are routinely bypassed by tech-savvy Iranians using virtual private networks, also called VPN. Earlier, during a presidential debate, now Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian had criticized Iran's strict internet policy, saying the internet filtering could impact the country's economy as many small businesses depend on social media. According to Access Now, a digital rights group, in 2023, Iran ranked third globally in the number of times it shut down the internet.
A recent study that analyzed over 500 medical AI devices found that nearly half of those approved by the US Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, lack clinical validation data. In other words, it was found that 43% of these FDA-approved devices have not been tested with actual patient data. Researchers noted that despite FDA approval, this does not guarantee the devices have been rigorously tested for clinical effectiveness. While AI holds great potential in healthcare, the lack of real-world testing raises major concerns. The study also revealed that some devices were tested using synthetic images rather than real patient data. Researchers hope their findings will prompt more global research and clinical validation efforts to ensure the safety of medical AI technologies. Time now for some quick updates from day 2 of the US Open, with both men's and women's world number 1 in action. Top seed Yannick Sinner survived an opening match scare against American Mackenzie McDonald in the men's singles. The Italian was playing his first match since he was cleared